Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. I hope you all had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Marshall Kosloff is back in the house with us. Marshall, it's great to see you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to have you back here. And everyone, thank you so much for how supportive you were after Thursday's show. I had an amazing time, and I know we're going to have a really great time together on Tuesday. Quick reminder, Krystal is back on Thursday, and you can see me on Breaking Points clips of the Realignment podcast that are posted here on Wednesday. Lots of great stuff between Saagar and I. As we will point out, we are 300 subscribers away from getting the channel to 50K, so would love anyone who enjoyed this episode to go check us out there.
Go ahead and help us out there, folks. Please do us that favor. Okay, we got great stories for everybody. So we're going to start with the jobs report, but we have other stuff like college. There's an alarming drop in the number of men who are dropping out of college. It's a big societal trend. We're going to figure out what's going on there. Obviously, there's some political fallout from what's happening there with the Texas abortion law. We're going to break that all down for everybody. Trump is making, and his allies in particular, making a big noise about running in 2024. They want to capitalize on Biden's continually falling poll numbers. The 9/11 papers, so Biden has moved to declassify some 9/11 papers. A lot of you asked about that. We're going to break down what you need to know. But we will start with what I think is the biggest story of the day, of the month, really of the year, which is the U.S. economy. As the economy goes, the president goes, and the party in power. And unfortunately for Biden, fortunately for a Republican, and really I think unfortunately for most Americans right now, the economy is not doing so well. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen, which just shows us the recovery in terms of the hit that we just took in August. So we added far fewer jobs than most economists had expected, only 235,000. Largely this is due to the Delta variant, but there's a lot of other discussion, and the unemployment rate has now fallen slightly to 5.2%. But the real story is actually beneath those numbers. Go ahead and put the next one up there on the screen, and you can actually see exactly where the loss in jobs is. Retail lost 29,000 jobs. Restaurants, 42,000. So you saw gains in other areas. You got 74,000 there in the business sector, 53,000 in warehouse, 37,000 in manufacturing, 36,000 entertainment, 17,000 IT. So basically, the Delta variant, the pandemic, restrictions, lockdowns, that is just completely dragging down the U.S. economy. And really, Marshall, this is a major problem for Joe Biden, and he essentially acknowledged as such in his speech. He was like, look, it's because of the Delta variant, and that is partially true, but also it is because of policy that is now being affected in some of the nation's largest states. Return here in Washington, D.C. to mask mandates. Oregon, same thing. California as well has got some sort of pandemic restrictions. You pair that with general consumer confidence and the inability to go into a restaurant, and you have a disaster. I mean, just so people understand, the $235,000 or 235,000 jobs which were added, that was 700,000 less than what was expected. So obviously stock market goes into a tailspin, but really what it is these are the types of numbers that we were used to seeing back in January of 2021. It was not supposed to be this way in September, and I think that's the biggest political liability that Joe Biden has right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone, the real problem here is that the Delta variant, regardless of how you feel about the individual mandates or the specific policies, has just completely bowled over everything. It bowled over the confidence that everyone had. It bowled over the Biden administration's hopes that they could turn the page on all these things. And here's what I'm really worried about. I'm worried about winter. If there's this lack of confidence right now, what happens when the winter surge, which we can expect no matter what happens when that happens?
And exactly right. And this is why I'm actually really beginning to get worried. And you can already see, if I was the White House, I'd be freaking out. So they tried to spin this a little bit from the Council of Economic Advisors. But there is no spinning this graph, folks, just to show you exactly how bad it is for them. Let's go ahead and put that up there on the screen, the Council of Economic Advisors. You can see the curve. Now, they tried to put it this way. Today's jobs report show the economy added 235,000. That's an average gain of 750,000 over the last 3 months. For those who are just listening, you can see a precipitous increase in the monthly job growth. You saw 800,000, then you saw 1 million, and then the precipitous 800,000 drop in a single month from July to August of 21. So that is the problem that they are seeing in the White House right now. Not only did they see a massive decline in the number of new jobs added to the economy, but as we saw, the sectors which were driving the growth previously, those are now losing jobs. So what does that mean? It means that consumer confidence is beginning to plummet, which is actually the first thing that we already saw on retail consumer confidence. People's willingness to go out and eat, that is beginning to go down. As you pair that with mask mandates, vaccine mandates, whatever policy which is being put into place in some of the nation's most populous states, you're gonna have a real issue. And it's interesting, and I think it is important, many Republicans are pointing to this, and they did this a lot during the pandemic and are saying this is purely because of blue state lockdowns. That is just simply not the case. But I will say that in the age of the vaccine, in the age of vaccine efficacy, and really in the age of, I personally think, having to live and learn that COVID is likely to be a largely endemic disease, especially given where winter is, policy is gonna matter a lot more than it did back in January, November of 2020. And I'll tell you why, which is that at that time, when we had to make a trade-off, or at least what we were thinking about as a trade-off between protecting the elderly and, having dining capacity or whatever at 25%, I understand, and I was on the wrong side of public opinion, but, generally what I was saying was like, I think that is a case where I think the American people would support that. Now that you do have a vaccine with, 99.9 whatever percent of efficacy in protecting elderly from death and hospitalization, then that's a different situation. So I do think that the American people's willingness, which was overestimated at the time, and especially now, for dealing with, and I'm not talking necessarily about mask mandates, I'm talking about what we had here in Washington, which was like 25% restriction on indoor dining. I do not think that is going to remain there, although I could be wrong. What do you think?
Yeah, here's the problem. The reason why this has become so controversial is that disease control policies are a mix of public policy and politics. And I talked about this on Thursday, but I just think as much as we can, if we could try to depoliticize this as much as possible, that would be the huge thing. And once again, you're seeing these cases where you're seeing blue states overreach. There's this desire to say, hey, we are doing something, we're making a move, we are gonna be actually different than the red states. That's the exact opposite of what we want. But at the same time, I don't think the exact way to do the COVID policy is just to say, what does X polling numbers say?
Right.
That is what actually is going to lead to disaster. And that's why we're seeing all these differing actual results for people.
Yeah, you're seeing these very strange cultural crosscuts where it's like, the way that you prove that you're really, hardcore as a Republican is you ban mask mandates. The way that you prove that you're a hardcore blue state governor is like you bring back outdoor mask mandates. And it's like, well, okay, like what's going on here? Exactly. And look, the science around all of that is very mixed, and we've talked a lot about here, especially whenever it comes to children in schools. But really what we are beginning to see, especially with the large case increase day over day, is in the hospitalizations in particular, absolute vast majority are people who are unvaccinated. Same thing whenever it comes to the deaths. And that is why it is concentrated largely in areas where you don't have a large number of people who are vaccinated within the general population. So personally, I think that is where we should look at. Whereas otherwise, if you are vaccinated and you get COVID, like me, which is what happened to me, well, what's gonna happen? Yeah, I was sick for like 4 days, and that sucked, don't get me wrong. But that doesn't mean that should justify kind of some of the more onerous restrictions that we had in the past. And so really, as you're pointing to, if we go back to some sort of lockdown regime like we saw back in November and September, the economy is gonna crater in terms of what we saw last time. Especially if we see school closure, college closure, and more. I do not know if they will close the colleges again, but I do certainly could foresee a situation where something like that happens. School closure, restriction on hours, curfews, the types of things that we saw. Again, I do think that the economic deleterious effect there, that's gonna have just a big problem for Biden, because as I predicted, back whenever he became president, I was like, look, the guy's only gotta do two things. You gotta pass these checks, get everybody vaccinated. I was like, now get everybody back to normal. Now, for better or for worse, and you can blame him or you can not, the problem is that events are moving such that we're not going back to normal, at least under the current way that him and the White House and the public health people are looking at this. And so he is gonna share some of the blame, as Trump did, for a rising number of cases, especially in the winter. And as he's already, the only area of public policy where he's above 50% is his handling of COVID. It's at 51% on average. I think that's gonna begin to go down, and that's a big problem for him.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, all we could hope that public policy people would do is identify the fact that all that actually matters in the discussion you just gave is getting people vaccinated.
Yeah, right.
How do you do that in a trustworthy way? The vaccine passport thing obviously did not work from a pure, how do we ensure consumer confidence in anything?
Right.
So how do you actually get this done when, despite what I said earlier, this is just so politicized? So that's what the number one question that every single policymaker should be asking here. Because as we're seeing in all these blue and red states, when you swing too far to the other direction, there actually really is backlash, and that isn't sustainable.
100% right.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.